Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of In Focus as we present conversations, reflections, and the way forward. I'm your host today, Leah Crag-Chaderton, and we're tackling another significant topic, healing wounds, exploring reparations for St. Kitts and Nevis. Reparations go beyond the compensation. They aim to address the deep injustices of slavery, colonization, and exploitation that have left lasting scars. The Caribbean, through the CARICOM Reparations Commission, has been leading efforts to secure justice, and St. Kitts and Nevis has been playing an active role. Today, we'll discuss with our special guests how reparations can help heal psychological wounds, promote economic justice, and restore our cultural heritage. Your participation is key as we explore what healing means for our nation. So let's dive right in. Welcome to Conversations, Reflections on the Way Forward. We now turn to our guests, and we'll ask each of you to give a short introduction, letting our online viewers know who we're talking to today. We'll start with you, Ras Sankofa.
Give thanks. My name is Ras Sankofa Maccabee. Give thanks to the Almighty Father, His Son Yahshua Emmanuel the Messiah, and Empire Selassie the First. I'm a member of the Tewaladi House of David, House of Yehuda Musical Foundation, and I'm still also part of the organization of Astaphan in Unity. So we give thanks.
I'm Laverne Brookes. I'm an educator, and I teach history at the CSEC as well as the Cape level, and also dabble at the university level.
I am Carla Astaphan. I am chair of the St. Kitts Nevis National Reparations Committee. I'm a member, representing member at the CARICOM Reparations Commission, and a student of history, currently about to pursue a master's in reparatory justice at the University of Glasgow in conjunction with the University of the West Indies.
Greetings in the name of the Most High, Empire Selassie the First, and Empress Pinney. I'm Ras Iroy, and I am the co-chair of the St. Kitts Nevis National Reparations Committee. I'm also the chair of the organization of Rastafari in Unity, our umbrella Rastafari organization, and an advocate for things like reparations and justice in humanity.
Okay, great. Well, we don't have a lot of time today, so we'll get right into it. Carla, I'm going to put you in the hot seat as the Madam Chair, ladies first, Co-Chair Iroy, and we'll start right off. Can you provide us with a brief overview of the history of reparations in the Caribbean and possibly globally if you can?
Okay, well, back in 2013, 2014, if my memory serves me right, the members of the governments of CARICOM met, and they had decided to form the CARICOM Reparations Commission, which ended up being chaired by Sir Hilary Beckles. The CARICOM Reparations Commission would create the CARICOM 10-point plan. I think it was launched in 2014, and the 10-point plan has 10 different points that is hoped to be achieved. It's 10 points for reparatory justice. The apology being one of the first points. So this 10-point plan looks at approaching the European countries who benefited from the enslavement of Africans. We are seeking reparations because these countries were the sole beneficiary of wealth that was extracted from these islands, building up those countries. We were left far behind. So the apology, you had, was it health? Yeah, yes, what you're saying? Access. Education, indigenous people, and so on. I'll let some other people roll it. But yes, now it has become more of a global movement. as places like Africa, America, you know, all of these places, Africa was very much, was the place that was bled off for children. And so the Africans have come on board as well. You had the Americans, the enslavement of Africans in America. So there's a strong reparative justice movement in America as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that, Carla. So one of the questions that we've been receiving from the general public is, what would you consider the moral and ethical justifications for reparations? And I'll let Sankofa take this one to start, but of course feel free to think of your responses in the meantime, because that's one of the things we hear. Persons who are not strong advocates for reparations, they ask, why do you feel entitled to reparations? So tell us a bit about what moral ties entitles us to this reparation.
Well, the law, for one thing, they created laws. Every individual society created laws so they can govern the people in the right way. And the law says, basically, if somebody do something wrong to you, there's different ways you could attack it. You could try to go to them and make peace with them and try to settle the matter out of court, or you could actually bring a civil proceedings against the ill that they have done to you. And in some farms, you could actually encourage a criminal proceeding if the ill was that bad enough. Now, when somebody rape, torture, murder individuals, those are high sentences in the criminal court. Those are life sentences. So if somebody did all these atrocities, and over time they was able to justify these atrocities based on the fact that they had a right to do this. This was their way of life, and this is the way that they strategized to make themselves rich. That doesn't justify the wrong that they did. So morally, we have a great, because it's wrong being done to you, you have that moral justification to try to make right the wrong that somebody have done unto you. Just in that basic terms. It's biblical as well too for those who believe in the Bible. Back in the days in the Bible, when somebody does something like this, usually they put the person, the aggressor, into your hand, and you choose what punishment you would want to give unto them. So basically, I think it's justified because it was an ancient wrong, and it is a wrong that actually made us poor in our future life, and it made the other side rich. So to equate it and to justify it is obviously that we have to get some kind of allocation of funds, or even spiritually have some form of reconciliation so we can have that peace to coexist. Otherwise, regardless to money alone cannot make us coexist the way that we need to. In reparations, you will also have to have a form of forgiveness, you know, reconciliation, so that you could have that peaceful, you know, aspect of it as well. Okay. So.
Thank you so much for that, Sankofa. As you mentioned in terms of the wrong that was done, let's segue into the legacy of slavery and colonialism and how it shaped the socio-economic landscape of St. Kitts. And how has this wrong translated to where we are as a people, not just now, but where we've come from? And I'll call you Laverne now for the first time. Yes, yes, my teacher, my former teacher, who I could not refer to as Laverne. Please, Laverne, respond to the question.
Just to piggyback on what Sankofa would have said, the issue of morality and ethics is important when we speak to reparations. Reparations is not just about money. And I think that somewhere in the discussion, the nuance of repair is lost, because reparation is not just about money. What we need to recognize is that for us as a people, there are other societies where reparations was paid. And reparations began as early when the British decided to pay the former slave masters for releasing the enslaved. So they got billions of dollars, which they stopped paying about 2015. And so for us as a people in St. Kitts and Nevis and the wider Caribbean and other parts of the diaspora who would have been affected, there is a need for us to recognize the importance of what has happened to us as a people, how persons were dehumanized, how persons were classified as less than human, how they were basically the sweat and tears and blood that was used to create an empire, that a lot of us tend to forget that Britain had an empire, France had an empire, Spain, Portugal, and all the other European countries, and they have formed us as a people who have basically we are always looking back to find a way of creating a viable option for ourselves. And anytime we find a viable option, that option is attacked. And so they have tried to keep us dependent in the process. And we have tried several different ways of forming a society where we can eke out a living and become independent, but we have always found that we are in violation or in contravention of some international law or protocols. So for example, when we had offshore financial companies and we were trying to create an independent space for ourselves, we found ourselves either grey listed or blacklisted. We have tried with the CBI program, and now we see that is also under attack. We have tried tourism, and we saw what happened. We find that whatever we have tried to become, when we try to emerge from the trenches of dependency, we have been put back. So every time it's 10 steps forward and 20 steps backwards. And so for us, the issue of slavery and colonialism, it is prevalent, it is here, sometimes we see it in the policies and procedures in which OECD countries and other countries deal with us as Caribbean nations, and St. Kitts is no exception. And so for us seeking reparations, it is not just about money, it is about repairing the social wrongs, it is about repairing the ethical, moral, and political injustices to us as a people and what our ancestors would have endured over a period of time.
Fantastic response. Actually, as you were speaking, particularly in relation to the lasting legacy of the colonial times, even within St. Kitts, we still do have those, we have certain things that we conduct, how we conduct business, especially in the government system. Why is it that we still have to pay in stamps? Why was that process implemented in the first place? What was it meant to deter? It was a matter of control and ensuring that the post-slavery persons didn't have access to money. So they had to operate with the stamps. They didn't trust the workers. And then know why we're still here practicing this. As Iroy, I see you're smiling, and I know you must know that I'm coming to you next with my question. So we've heard from the panel so far that reparations is more than money. It's about restoration. It's about repairing this damage. So my next question to you then is, how can reparations contribute to the healing of the psychological wounds left by slavery and colonialism?
As I listened, I smile, yes, because there's a section of reparation that we should be adding on, and that is to our governments, because even after slavery, our governments continued to run the place, just fashioning off of the whole slavery system. So there is a level of commitment that is needed for government to step up and realize that they too should be setting reparation program in place for us here. So your question?
How can it contribute to repairing or the healing of the psychological wounds of slavery and colonialism?
It's basically, the term reparation and what it means, and to live through it is exactly, that's the achievement we would get. Let's look around us. We see the way we conduct a lot of our businesses, a lot of our streets, a lot of our buildings, our institutions still carry the name of the colonial master. And simple thing like changing names and changing, you know, the names of places and streets and the way we do things would begin to change the mindset of the people. We do, and as I heard earlier, we do hold on to a lot of these things. We still have a representative of the crown as head of our state. You know, little things like these that are still in our faces every day. You know, we have to physically make that shift. There is a part of the 10-point plan that speaks to the psychological repair, because, you know, 400 years of beating down on a people, you would have changed even the DNA. And so it takes some collaborative and serious intervention, you know, programs that we could help to reverse that whole psyche of the black man and woman here in this country.
Thank you so much. We'll take a quick break shortly, but I want to go back to Carla. In your role, and Ras Iroy, you can jump in as well. Can you tell us a bit about the legal challenges involved with pursuing reparations, particularly from the powers that be in Europe?
Well, I know that there has been a report that was created as to what the payment would be. It's called the Brattle Report, okay, where they've sort of quantified what the repayment would be to us, but it leaves out quite a lot of, as Dr. June Suma said in a speech some months ago, as I listened to her, quite a lot was not taken into consideration. So when you talk about the legal aspect, I mean, there are, as Ms. Laverne said, it has been done before. Precedents have been set. We've seen reparations being paid out in other places. We've talked, I know recently we heard about the Mau Mau, which was the people in Kenya who were. So there are legal heads around the world who have dealt with reparations, and the CARICOM, the Global Reparations Movement, they are looking at those lawyers who will be able to deal with it, lawyers in our own region, lawyers outside of our region, to see how we are going to tackle this. Okay, so I think the legally it can be done. Legally, at the international level, it has been done already, and there's a push within at the international level so that we can seek, you know, reparations from these countries.
Okay, great. Well, that's one thing. I mean, it's great to know that, because as we tackle with this issue, we also want to make sure that there is a possible positive ending, and not that not that anything that's being said will be a waste, but at least we would want to have a positive conclusion to this. So it's good to know that
we've seen already that some families have come on board. It didn't take legal minds. What CARICOM is really wants to do now with all of these families and institutions is not just about them telling us, okay, I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do that for you. It is for us to know what it is our ask is going to be. Okay, so there's this movement now, there's a movement among the descendants of persons whose families were compensated at abolition, who are coming forward. There's a repair movement, a repair campaign that has been undertaken by the CEO of, I don't know if he's still the CEO, but he started this repair campaign. I'm sure you all have been hearing it in the media. So descendants are coming forward and they're saying, okay, we've heard the Gladstone say, okay, we'll give £150,000 or the Church of England came up with some figure. Where are they getting this from? You know, is it sufficient? Is it what we need? Is it all we need? You know, we ourselves, in our discussions with one of the institutions, we also have to look at, is this all that, you know, that we need? So we have to be clear, and we have to not wait for them to just say, I'm doing this or that, because it's not reparation, it's more like a gift or a donation. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll pick up as to where the committee in St. Kitts, in conjunction with the CARICOM Commission, where we're heading, what we're doing, and what our ask is. But we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back to our special edition of In Focus, where we're here with conversations, reflections, and the way forward.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we discuss healing wounds, exploring reparations for St. Kitts and Nevis.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we discuss healing wounds, exploring reparations for St. Kitts and Nevis.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?
And we're back on our special edition of In Focus, where we're presenting reflections, we're presenting conversations, reflections, and the way forward. We're continuing our discussion here on reparations and healing the wounds of colonialism and slavery. So before the break, we were discussing families coming on board on their own and making repertory gifts. But now we are going into the distinction between those families taking their onus, whether it's their conscience or they feel it's the best thing to do, making these gifts, and what the reparations movement is actually about. So Carla, you're back in the hot seat. And can you tell us a bit about how the movement has, what steps they've taken as it comes to approaching the colonial or the former colonial powers, and what the asks have been as it relates to reparations?
Well, I think as to the first point, the apology, the CARICOM Reparations Commission wrote to all of the countries of Europe that were involved in slavery. Okay, our governments have supported that. That as to whether they got responses, we know for a fact that at this time the Dutch made an apology to their people, and they have since come up with a figure that they will, and I know the Dutch, those persons who are working in reparations in the Dutch countries said it has whittled, you know, and when you divide it, what it is, okay? So it is the same for our governments. We would love to hear, it would be good if England, who benefited greatly, France, and those are the countries, to maybe to a lesser level. Well, Spain, for the Spanish countries, of course, had a strong, but we would like to hear from them the apology. I guess they're all shying away from it, because once you issue an apology, then you have to talk about how are you going to compensate those that you have harmed.
So as we're speaking on compensation, sorry to cut you there, who do you feel should bear that economic burden of the compensation? Should it be the governments? Should it be special corporations that raise funds from the family? Or should it be the families themselves who are held accountable for this?
Well, you have the governments. The governments have a role to play. They are the main. They are the main. But as I said in before the break, families are coming on board. Institutions, the Anglican Church, the Church of England, the Gladstone, the Trevelyan, and others, even the University of Glasgow, with, you know, that program that I'm about to do has to do with because they found out about their role, the role of the original
their ancestors
owners in slavery.
Oh, at the university.
Yes. So when Glasgow went digging, they found that when, you know, Laura Trevelyan, for instance, we heard a lot about her. How did she find out? A cousin of hers, since the database from the legacies of British slavery was posted, that website where you can find all sorts of families. Some family of hers told her, well, our people, our ancestors owned 1,006 enslaved people on Grenada, and they were compensated for it. And so that is how she started in her own personal way and encouraged some of her family members as well. So that has sort of catapulted, and we're hearing about other families coming on board. So the Church of England, I mean, we can talk about St. Kitts. Yesterday, as I drove around the island, I was showing a friend the island was visiting for a couple of days, and to talk about what Iroy is saying, every place you go was a former estate. As you drive around St. Kitts, all of these names of places were former estates. And we know owners. You go in the database, you type in. I just remembered I wanted to look for Challenger. So we hear a lot about, for instance, Challengers being the first free village. We hear that Challenger was the only planter who freed all his enslaved at the abolition. So I just put his name in the database. He had 2 enslaved people at the time. So I'm not sure how it worked, whether he had let them free or he did not seek compensation or whatever, but just 2 are in the database. Okay, so he got about 37 pounds. But there are others who got large, 2,000, 3,000 pounds and so on. Can we find these families and approach them? Whether they are here, whether they have gone to Australia, whether their descendants are in England, I think there should be some sort of, they should consider some form of reparatory justice to the island.
Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. And we are operating on the premise that we are successful. We've engaged several stakeholders, government, private sector, families, etc. And for the most part, they're on board. They've accepted responsibility. And we now start speaking economics, finance. I know we've established earlier that that's not the major thrust of reparations, but it is a big factor. And it does go a long way. So let's talk a bit now about what benefits, or how can the financial aspect of reparations benefit the country, specifically St. Kitts and Nevis. And what would you say would be the most effective use of any funds received from reparations? Whether direct financial compensation, or should it go towards our existing debt in terms of, as a country, debt relief, or developmental aid in terms of social or socioeconomic programs, whether it's education, after school at-risk programs, that sort of thing. How do you think it should best be navigated? We have this money, or these monies from various areas. What would be the best use of it to push St. Kitts forward? St. Kitts Nevis, I apologize. My mother would have my head.
Anyone jumping in?
Oh, wait, this is for the panel. Anyone.
Well, I would say that the best thing is to first look at those people who attach reparations with repatriation. The reason for that is that most of us came here on ships. Like when there's 6 in a family, sometimes 3 brothers go and 3 sisters stay. So half of your family was left back home. So regardless to what, a lot of us yearn to know the other side of our family, whether we want to accept it or not. Psychologically, if you're human, and if I have 2 sisters and I grow up with them, and both of them, one leave to go to Europe and I don't see her again, and I have one with me, I'm going to always think and worry about what happened to the other sisters. this is a trauma that happened to most of us, and still, because the information being passed down to the individual family that you're part of, they still recount some of them stories, so you still long to learn about that ancient that was so aggressive and ran away and didn't get captured. So you still want to know where you came from. So any form of reparation should consider first those persons. All of us should be considered first, really. But those persons who want to go back home, who say repatriation is a must, whether by will or by force, they should be put in a special bracket and be attended to immediately, because that yearning for is important for them. You know, then there's those who want to stay. So they might want a more economical package so that they and their family could bring forward. But you can't just think about giving individuals money, because sometimes we get money and we squander it one time. So sometimes if the person is not a responsible person, and the person who you give all the money to is not responsible, you see how these government officials they check us. Sometimes they get big COVID package, and when we were supposed to get 10,000 each individual, we're getting a doctor fee. We're getting a doctor fee. You know, so I'm just trying to tell you, sometimes we cannot leave everything up to the government or even the persons responsible to be guiding the reparation process. Look at us in the Caribbean. From since the slave ship them come and gone, there's no connection with Africa. There's no enough spiritual connection to Africa. We don't have the governments of the Caribbean actually having no flights landing perfectly in St. Kitts, Antigua, Jamaica, or nowhere.
Barbados has recently.
They tried it, and in all of them, it failed. And it was set to fail, because the people who really control the airlines and control these big companies, they own the industry. And they don't want certain linkage with Africa, because they're going to say we're going to bring diseases. That's why they're coming up with these new diseases too, because that trade, that if we get connected to Africa from St. Kitts straight to Africa, we become millionaires. We don't need no reparations money, because the amount of gold and silver coming to us, and we become the wholesalers of the gold, of the silver. We don't need no reparations money if we connect to Africa, head of state to head of state, in an area where your nation, a sovereign nation to another sovereign nation, have our own airliners and tankers moving back and forth to Africa. Nigeria have the second most largest gas, oil production, and Venezuela is almost #1. So right between there is the Caribbean.
Let me hold you in a bit, Sankofa. You made an excellent point as it relates to distribution. I just want us to come back to that. How do we deal with distribution? Is it that we deal with it on an individual basis? Do we do our research? And Ms. Brookes, you can jump in here. Do we do our research and identify families and split that amongst the families? Or do we think that it then needs to be on a larger scale so that it can impact more persons positively? Instead of, as you said, individuals, I may receive 10,000 and squander my 10,000. Someone else may receive less, but are really in need of more. So how best do we think the distribution aspect of it should take place?
One of the major problems in relation to reparations is that each person is going to ask for the bigger half if there is such a thing. And what we need to recognize is, whenever there is money, there becomes a us and a them. We see that there are problems, and what I think needs to be done is that the monies need to be in a fund, and the fund should not just be individuals just monitoring the fund. The fund needs to be invested, and it needs to be invested in areas where we have serious problems, like our infrastructure. It needs to be invested in things like education and healthcare, because giving individual monies, what are we going to do at the end of the day when we see that we have serious infrastructural problems, we have serious social problems, so serious economic problems? There is no need for us to, a lot of us are generations far removed from the slave system, but at the same time we come from the same ancestors that were brought here. And so in terms of saying who will get what, that in itself is problematic. And so we know the nature of the beast whenever there is money to be shared. And so the money should not be an allocation to families, but it should go to the development of the communities. And it should be monitored. It should not be a case where you take large funds and you're just distributing it on an individual basis. We need to pay attention to what our needs are. And in terms of, I think, the issue of quantity and how much who should get, we need to also recognize that we need access, and access to healthcare, not just in the region, but outside the region, and access to education, access to economic development, because as we speak, as the EPA expires in 2025, what is going to happen to us? And so these are the kind of things that we must pay attention to, rather than just the dollars and cents, because they are a greater impact for the Caribbean region and for small societies like ours.
Okay. Carla, you wanted to?
Yes. When Sankofa spoke, one of the things that came to mind as to repatriation, I think in this modern climate that we live in, we know that there's DNA testing, right? That has come available. I think for me, one of the suggestions that I made at a CARICOM level was for the ordinary man, for every person to have access to be able to get their mapping done, the DNA mapping done, so that they know where the strongest DNA, their roots lie. Because not all of us have $100 US dollars to pay for. So that's just one area. I think that would be able to guide us if we choose to go back where the large, because we are all mixed up, and so we want to know the percentages and so on. That was something. As to the question about where money should be spent, I agree with Laverne as to setting up of a trust fund, because we have these families coming. One of the organizations we are talking to, we started looking at tourism, scholarships in tourism, and hospitality, because St. Kitts, of course, is a tourism-focused island. We are, our main industry being tourism. So, and there, that particular company also has a relationship with the hospitality industry. So they felt that was something that they would like to give to. On the other hand, we of the Reparations Committee here are saying, let us create a fund, if anything, and then we, not just, a fund which will have persons, whether it's a legal mind and other minds from around the island, who would be able to say, well, this person, people can write in, or just like when you're applying for a scholarship, or some as they need, they would be able to access funds. And we also, of the Reparations Committee, would have the opportunity to do the work, the advocacy, to enlighten people much more about reparations.
Can I
Sure,
simply add that I look at it a little differently, in that I don't see how people spend money should determine whether or not they're entitled to it. As much as I fully support a good developmental plan, don't just give us access to your hospitals. Let's have the best hospital developed in St. Kitts Nevis, in all the specialties. Let's have the best colleges. Those who want to return, as Brother Sankofa say, there should be a compensation package. Mm-hmm. The Caribbean Rastafari Organization has proposed this to CARICOM in terms of a project where, visa-free lands, business opportunities, all these are put in a package for us to return. And so it's important that, we look at the whole developmental package. But I still feel that there's nothing wrong in persons receiving cash benefits, direct cash benefits. Because let's look at it. To the ordinary man, how do you think the ordinary man would think and feel reparations? I mean, he may not have another child going to school, he might pass that age, so a school doesn't mean anything to him, personally. So maybe a little cash would empower the local man, or the, you know, as you say, the day-to-day man on the street.
Okay, so then tell me this, from an organizational standpoint then, has any consideration been given as yet to how, should the reparations movement be successful in St. Kitts and Nevis, what structure that would take in terms of the distribution, how we'll utilize the contribution?
I was saying that we set up a trust. I was in a meeting,
so that's the goal of the committee,
so like
the local committee.
President, there's Guyana. I was very interested in what Eric Phillips of Guyana had to say about how they have structured themselves. They have people from the different areas. I think about 20-something persons sit on a trust fund, on a trust, and then they have a smaller group. So as they look at business proposals or whatever proposals come to them and decide how the funds could be dealt with. So, you know, they had I think they received some money from the Gladstone family. So that is how I guess they are handling it. So it is for us to look at what is being done in other countries, what has been done and what is successful, and see on a smaller scale, because we are a small island, how we could replicate it.
I think a needs assessment needs to be done, because what Iroy is saying is very important. In order for us to have equitability, or whatever them big words they be, but for it to be equitable, right?
There you go.
For us to really have that there, we need to do a needs assessment, so we know that these persons might need it more than this other persons. So I'm here, I'm a millionaire, right? But I'm black. I need that reparations money. But then you have somebody there with 9 children, trying to feed their family with just $15,000, $20,000 out of the year. It's almost impossible. So you can't go give that millionaire there $15,000 and feel like you give this family $15,000 and that was equitable. You know? Equitability comes because of basically dealing in the need of the person, so that you could balance them, so they could come closer to be more equal to the other person. You know, if I'm understanding the term.
Yes,
so I think that we really need to consider the needs assessment.
The difference between equality and equity.
And everybody's needs might be different.
Explained.
So how are you going to measure that as well? I know it's a we're issue, and it's just like we're going to meet, as you say, having that collectivity with persons. It would bring a light to the situation.
I think what Eric said, in the different areas, they have groups, and then the group would choose a person to represent. So let us say we're looking at, say, Bastia, West Bastia community. Who would be the person who stand the point? You know, so
grassroots organizations,
grassroots organizations,
cultural organizations,
right. So
those types of.
They put forward
and they
someone.
have representation,
right?
But so, ideally, what the committee is looking at is having a management structure in place that deals with distribution, and they will take into consideration all factors. So the needs assessment, as Sankofa pointed out, and probably what could be considered is, while you use the funds for the developmental aspect, you have a portion of it assigned for persons to access based on their need.
Right.
So you have it where if someone comes, as Sankofa rightly indicated, and they have multiple children on a lower income, then they can have access to some cash once they've justified, or the committee sees it fit based on their need. Iroy, you wanted to jump in, and then we'll come to you, Miss.
Can I yield to the sister first?
Okay, please? Great. He's such a gentleman. I love that.
A Rasta man.
Yes, a Rasta man.
What I'm saying is that we know in small communities like ours, there is this uneven distribution. And when you have uneven distribution, there's a greater need for monitoring. There is a greater need to make sure that who need should get.
Right, so we need those safeguards in place.
Right, you have to put on the safeguards, because if you don't have those safeguards, it's the same people who are going to benefit.
What kind of safeguards would you recommend, Ms.
No, you have to be mindful. Somebody might have 9 children. You have, as you said, you have to do a needs assessment. You have to investigate. You have to make sure that the people who need this money is getting it. Another thing too, you need a proper hospital. Well, state of the art. You could have an old shop, but make sure that the people have access to good health care. So the money should not be that everybody's going to get a few dollars or everybody going to get $1,000.
Something that benefits the global.
It must benefit everyone in the process. You're doing education. The education must be accessible. The university, you must have university. People must have access to. Basically, what you have in is serious social programs that will benefit all within the community. So when access to education, that everybody should have access to tertiary education, if that is the sum that we have. So everybody must gain in the process. And when we say education, we're not just talking about where people go and get into the academics alone, but if you're into skills, whatever little thing that you need to do, because education is formal and informal. And so we must have...
Even in those traditionally non-academic sectors, there is still a level of knowledge transfer that needs to happen for persons to excel in their fields.
So you need to do that. And so we need to have institutions. And one of the things that we need to have is a campaign. I mean, we talk reparations. When we say reparations and you say money, people just hearing money. There is a need for us to educate people. And because when people just hear money coming, you know what is going to happen. We know, let us not pretend. So there is a need for education, right? And if you educate the population, if you're because there is a need for us to do it, not just now, but constantly, that there is some avenue that you provide information. And information is power. Knowledge is key.
That brings me to my next question, actually, because then I was going to tack back on something we mentioned earlier about involving the community organizations. So my question was going to be, or my question is rather, what role then can these community organizations play in the advocacy and the sensitization, the education transfer for reparations on a whole? And is this something that the Reparations Committee locally has considered in terms of engaging more of the community, having them more involved in this fight for reparations?
That's something that I brought up even at our very last meeting. You know, we have St. Christopher Heritage Society, I believe. St. Christopher Heritage Society. We have the Brimstone, the National Trust. We have the Brimstone Hill Fortress. There was a recent Emancipation Day concert. Where's the Reparations Committee in it? So we are going to be writing to them so that we can all be on the same train, you know. Earlier this year, I had it was a Zoom meeting with the Rotary Club of La Amiga. They wanted to learn more. So if more clubs, more organizations like that could come forward and let us, you know, bring the word, we can bring the word to them, you know, talk about it, explain, educate, basically. Time has been, we've had a rough time, but we have been into some of the schools and we want to continue that thrust going into the schools. For many years, people Afrocentric or people strong have been going to the schools during Black History Month, but that's something that we want to do for reparations as well.
So, forgive my ignorance, we celebrate Black History Month here?
Yes, you know that.
February?
No?
I thought it was as an American construct. I didn't realize we subscribe to it locally. Forgive me.
But there are so many dates, and that's the thing. There's so many dates. We do the Black History Month because America has blown it up. Like you say, it's an American construct. But there are so many other dates that we need to be aware of, that we need to celebrate. The Buckley's Uprising, we have African Liberation Day. We recently had you have Emancipation, you have the Transatlantic slave route. Yeah, I think that they've just passed.
When that was
and
correct.
abolition of the slave trade, and other. The memory of those persons like Marcus of the Woods, the earliest revolt to have taken place, maybe not only in St. Kitts, but in the Caribbean, happened in Deer Bay. Things that we need to dig into our history and really know, other important dates and celebrate those, right? And do things, create. Yes, Mr. Stapleton created a book called Places of Memory.
Places of Memory.
And there's so much information, not only in St. Kitts, but on Nevis, Maroon Hill and over on Nevis. Those are places that need to be identified. We need to put up signs. We need to, make them places. And I'm especially wanting to see more about our people who contributed to the abolition. I read about someone on Estridge Estate. There's so much rich history here that we need to celebrate. So not only during Black History Month, but year-round.
Agreed. I feel like every day is Black History Day. I mean,
yes.
we are a majority here. I understand why it's needed in America. But a slight segue, Miss Brookes, do we still have that book in the curriculum, The People Who Came? Is that still what our children are learning history from, or his story from?
Yeah, but The People Who Came was actually written by a West Indian. It's written by Lennox Honeychurch, who's a historian from Dominica. I would not I hear people talking about The People Who Came. But we need revisions. Yeah, there have been revisions to it, and it is a good starter for children in first form.
Yeah, so that book doesn't have who was here really before. They try to tell us it's just the Tainos and the Caribs them and what's not, but the reality there was Africans here before these Africans came. There was Africans living in the Caribbean. Look, just read Ivan Van Sertima and he's going to explain that to you. All these indigenous African faces of 3,000-year-old dynasties that was already living in these areas. So we have to rewrite our history as well too. When we consider reparations, we have to rewrite the history as well as part of the reparations project. We also have to get back our Ethiopia, so many things was taken from Ethiopia and so much other African countries. And some nations were able to reclaim some of their heritage accordingly still, but there's a lot of them things they're out there, like obelisks up in Rome from Africa, these type of things. And just like they was able to carry them there on big tankers, they could bring them back on big tankers. So it's not just economically, culturally, they destroyed us. They took our greatest. They took the diadems from Ethiopian queens and carried them to America. I mean, not America, to England. So you know that there's a lot of richness out there that belongs to us physically as well too. Not rich in just money, but history.
There is a campaign, especially in Benin, to have artifacts that were taken to be returned. I think it was about maybe 2 years or a year ago they returned the skeleton of this lady from South Africa who was put on display.
I know it's reached a comical level now in terms of the contents of museums in European countries actually being stolen. So they always have them on display. And so you see a lot of memes now about it as more and more persons become aware. So we have a tendency of making everything just comical, but it sends the message, though, that more and more persons are becoming aware of it, and they're understanding that, hey, you did not get this by searching or finding, it was stolen, and just admit that, and then that's part of the reparations process as well. Why should you have these parts, these significant portions of our cultural heritage, of what makes us us? Why should you have them? Why shouldn't we have them? It's just like a family heirloom. If your great-grandmother left something and it's been passed down, why should I have it? Why should I take it away from you? It has no connection to me.
And not only that, when you look at those museums, you go to the Met, I've been to those different, they are so nice. You know, we spend so much money, we go visit them, everything is just put up so nice. I went to a museum in St. Eustatius, not in a small space, so lots of things, you don't have that load of space. Yeah. You
the
go
curation,
to our, the way
a different curation.
Yeah. So here, you know, we struggle in our space as well. Look at our museum. I think they're waiting. It's going through some refurbishment. But we can have other museums around the country. I think someone said they went someplace and every somewhere I read it, every village had a museum. Oh. Yeah. It doesn't have to be something big, but we can create something.
So this is something the committee can take on board. Is this included in your 10-point plan that you mentioned earlier? Iroy, I have not forgotten you. I'm going to come back to you, and then we're going to go to a break. So you're the last thing I'll do before the break.
On the 10-point plan as cultural, under cultural rehabilitation. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, Iroy, you had a point earlier, and you so kindly yielded to this book.
Yeah, it was concerning the, you know, how do we go about distributing and so on, and how we set it up. I really feel that it really should be taken out of the hands of government. And whatever statutory body, whatever body that is established should be comprised of almost every sector. It's going to be wide and then has its different subcommittees, but it must have representation from throughout the country. And at this point, I could say that, you know, groups, organizations like the Rastafari community, you know, those who have always been advocates for this kind of thing, these are people that must be, you know, very much involved in such a committee. As to where we start as well, one of the things that is quite lacking is you can't look on through any universities, stand corrected. Let's look at the UE, which a lot of us go. Not one African language being offered. Look in our country, we're talking reparations and repatriation. We have Mandarin in school. We're talking about billing bonds and ties, and we're not offering any African language. Okay, please, I'm feeling good.
It was the ancient days. Now you must do a language to graduate from the University of the West Indies, and a number of African languages are being offered. Clearly, not all. All. No, she's doing modern languages, so she's doing French and Spanish.
But they do have African languages on offer.
She should be able to access one of them.
They should be able to. Okay, so maybe she needs to speak.
Okay.
Somebody in the language department.
Right, so
that's enlightening.
We'll take a short break, and then we'll come back and discuss what role do we think faith-based organizations can play in the promotion and advocacy of reparations. So we'll be right back on our special edition of In Focus as we bring you conversations, reflections, and the way forward.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we discuss healing wounds, exploring reparations for St. Kitts and Nevis.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we discuss healing wounds, exploring reparations for St. Kitts and Nevis.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?
Edition of In Focus as we bring you conversations, reflections, and the way forward. Today we are continuing our discussion of healing the wounds and how reparations can help. We've covered a large bit of information so far, and now we're moving into how faith-based organizations, particularly Christian churches, can play a role in the advocacy and promotion of reparations. We are all well aware of the role that Christianity played in slavery and colonial times. We understand that that was one of the moral compasses they had in the day, and who justified slavery as being in the Bible and whatnot. So how can we, or let me rephrase this, how has the committee engaged the faith-based organizations, particularly the Christian ones, on the fight for reparations and the role that they can play to assist the country as we move towards reparations?
Last year I was invited to speak at the Anglican Church in Bastille for Emancipation Day. I think every year the Anglican Church makes an effort to bring persons to share on history of, and talk about emancipation. I spoke about reparations. So different people have represented over the years. So I think the Anglican Church is making that effort. I see the Christian churches are making some effort during those times as well. You see them, they always have something on their agenda to let their congregation know about slavery, about emancipation, about reparations, enlighten them about Africa. Unfortunately, yes, we do know that the Christians, the white man came with the Bible in his hand and fed us a dogma that wasn't ours. They tried their best to kill what was essentially ours, our spirituality. Over the years, as I have read, and I've read extensively, I had an African study Bible. I used to always be, and for a while I kind of was studying, doing biblical studies. You can, when I looked at the Black Study Bible, they showed that the story began in Africa. So when we were growing up, we were being shown, and some people feel it doesn't really matter the color of Jesus, but we were being shown white
Jesus.
Noah, a white Moses, a white this, a white that. Mm-hmm. But even as a child, I sort of was saying, but if I'm doing geography, and and you're seeing where the continent is, you're hearing about Egypt and those places, there's no way these people could have been a white people when it's black people coming out of there. So there are some theories that, and I think one of the things the Christian church has taken on is to let people know that it began in Africa, and although our people were being subjected to atrocities, they recognized in between there the story of God, of that, and this is one of the reasons that they embraced it. Some may, I know this one over there is dying, but I'm going to take the floor.
We're coming
this
to
is
you
how
next
I am looking at it, because
you need to share with the class.
These are stuff that I mean, put it this way. It is one of the theories, okay? There can be many theories. We know about the Catholic Church. You and I are both Catholic, and we get a lot of heat for being that. But we do know that the church, the Catholic Church, the Pope, many years ago, one of the popes, I can't remember which one right now, apologized for the role of the Catholic Church in slavery. This is something we're asking for today, but the church did it many years ago. So it is one of the things. We have seen the Catholic Church build schools, build churches throughout, all of the New World and so on. So it's one of the ways, I guess, they have tried to heal over time. My thing is, people need to be given a lot more. I listened to one of the pastors that I listen to comes from African priests I listen to every day. And we are being fed stuff, you know, about the church. But when I hear of a black saint that was from 400 something, that was way before slavery. And as I listen to him, there are many saints that he talked about that I did not know of that go back to 400, 100 and those times. So if you don't have a knowledge of
before.
The Christian faith that you belong to, you are going to keep, you know, just repeating and so on. And at the end of the day, for me personally, I say, when we take away Christianity, when we take away this, some of the teachings that we would have been given, what are we left with? We are left with parents who do not care about their children going to church because the church, the Christian church, was responsible for us in slavery, and so they're not doing anything. And at the end of the day, what's happening today? Children are not going to church. They're not. My Rastafarian brothers may have they have their people who
They're not going to Christian-based churches.
They're not going to Christian, but I'm talking about those who are not doing any sort of religion at all. They're not Rasta. Right. They're just out there floating in the wind. Okay? And we need to understand that Sunday school, whether we liked it or not, played a role. So, you know, when we are pulling people away from the Christian church, what are we saying to those who are left in the wind? You know, what sort of moral teachings are they having? You know, and you don't have to be Christian to have a moral teaching. So are we going to fill that void when we want to crucify the Christian church and not embrace anything else?
Thanks for that intervention. I saw Ras Iroy had some points he wanted to share with the entire class. So we're going to give him that opportunity. We want in on the secret, Ras Iroy.
I really can't be beating the church, but I'm sorry, I can't really give them that level of praise, you know, because the purpose of the church initially was to assist in the enslavement of our people. And we didn't need the church. We existed as a people. You hear how many hundreds of years with cities and religious and economic cities well established with our pharaohs and our kings. We did not need the church.
But do we think then that because of the role that the church played, the Christian churches played in colonialism and in the slavery, do we think that they should be targeted as or be held accountable for reparations?
Of course.
Whether economically or to help push that advocacy for and help cement or make the connection between the reparatory governments and the countries that are seeking reparations. Do we think that then the church should have a bigger role? Is that what we're saying?
They definitely should. I mean, they should spearhead that level of education, educating their people, their populace, their membership. Because the church has a very strong influence, so they have to do some serious revolutionary teachings within their church, which would hurt the organization. Because the way the organization is structured, this is not structured for black liberation and that kind of teaching. I mean, personally, let's take, for instance, some of the churches, even though they had the front of appearing to be good for the people. It's the Cattle Church, for example. Cattle was not an abolitionist. He didn't, not because he had a church. He felt that in Christianizing his enslaved people, he controlled them better. That doesn't deserve praise, as far as I'm concerned. And so I feel like we have institutions, not necessarily have to be churches, but the churches are here with us in great numbers, and they're not going anywhere. And so the whole mindset of how the church operates within the community has to change. For instance, we were we were shut out the other day at the International Day of Prayer when Rastafari and other faith-based groups were not given the opportunity to pray for this nation. That's a clear example as to where we need to go when it comes to the church, you know, Evangelical Association and Christian Council, accepting other faith base, because as far as they're concerned, these other faith base, especially if they're African oriented, are still mumbo jumbo, are mumbo jumbo, and so that level of education has to extend.
This is your perception of them.
Well, they have said it.
Oh, they've said
They have said it.
That's what I wanted confirmation.
They have said it when it comes to us being in the National Day of Prayer.
Okay.
And so I'm saying that mindset has to change. And we know where it has come from. So up in the clergy has to get that re-education as well.
Okay, yes, Ms. Brookes, you wanted to add something to that?
I think that in the Caribbean region, when we speak to religion, in most instances, we speak to the established religions. And I think that I would hope that most persons within the region would recognize that it is not just the Christian faith that we should speak to, because there are what we will call non-traditional religions, of which the Rastafari would have championed the cause of reparations long before, even
It's been long coming, actually.
before. You also had like the Shouter Baptist Liberation Group, who were persecuted in St. Vincent and Trinidad, who saw the need to bring persons that look like us into a different faith-based organization, or if you're Kumina, Pokamania, or Shangoism, or Orisha. And so we need to recognize that as a people in the region, that religion is not just about being a Catholic or an Anglican or Methodist.
Agreed.
Or Moravian or other what we'll call Christian faiths. But other faiths also do the same thing. It's just that they do it in a different way. And so my ritual may not be your ritual, and your symbolism may not be my symbolism, or my sect being your sect. And so in the region, we need to be open-minded as it relates to religion. It doesn't mean that because you're a Rasta that I detest what you do, right?
Exactly.
Your religion is your religion, because you chant psalms, you pray, right? We all go through the same process to reach to the same place. And so we need to be educated and understand that religion is important. In relation to reparations and Christianity, the church has played an important role in the whole idea of reparations. I mean, they were at fault. They were part of the process. They were one of the institutions that helped to maintain colonialism as well as the slave system. Because without the church, there would be no slavery, there would be no colonialism. And so after a while, you start to see like the Baptist ministers getting involved, getting the enslaved involved, and they too face persecution, because they felt that they should not be allowing persons that look like us to be a part of any established religion. And so it is important for us to come together as a group, it doesn't matter the religions, to find common ground in relation to reparations. When we talk about God and we talk about white Jesus, there is 3 black crucifixes, two are in the Caribbean, one in Nevis and one in Cuba, and the other one is in Virginia. So for us, we should see God in our own image, and not just looking at him as a white man with long flowing locks and that kind of thing. When we look at people, we must see our God in ourselves, and not just to be a white Jesus. And we have long established that God is in everyone's image. So I think that we have long moved past that. And so we need to make sure that people understand.
Agreed, 100%. And that seems like an excellent place to take a short break. So we'll be back with this special edition of In Focus, where we're bringing you conversations, reflections, and the way forward.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we discuss healing wounds, exploring reparations for St. Kitts and Nevis.
Would you stand up
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we discuss healing wounds, exploring reparations for St. Kitts and Nevis.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?
And we're back with our special edition of In Focus, where we're bringing you conversations, reflections, and the way forward. We're discussing reparations and healing the wounds. Here we have our wonderful guests with us, and we're now moving into what role do we think the diaspora can play in our reparations movement? How can they contribute to the promotion of reparative justice?
Well, the Pan-African movement, people say it started in America. Some people say it started in the Caribbean because even some of these persons was American, but their history is coming through the Caribbean, and their foreparents was probably actually born in the Caribbean, and they themselves was actually born in the Caribbean. You have the likes of Marcus Garvey, who might be born in St. Kitts, to tell you the honest truth, rather than Jamaica, if you really study the historical documents. Then you have this other one who's I can't remember his name, but he worked a lot with a brethren over in Bermuda, who's actually my family. My family was part of Marcus Garvey movement too. In fact, most of Marcus Garvey right-hand persons in America were from St. Kitts. Mr. Mills is a Kittitian. My great, would have been like Auntie May. She was a Kittitian. Then they had another brethren there, another colonel too, Mills, was a Kittitian as well too. So Marcus had a lot of Kittitians, Panamanians, and Jamaicans as part of his society. So the Caribbean have a strong role in this reparation and repatriation movement. Just like they collaborated back in the days, and it was hard for them to collaborate during that time, and they was able to do it still. The Pan-African movement need to collaborate with the Rastafari movement, need to collaborate with the other Afrocentric movements, the Reparations Committee of all these states, and come together and design a proper organized plan. A delegation was sent to an African summit in South Africa under the greatness of Sister Ijanya was on that committee, as well as representing Rastafari Christian, which is actually a Kittitian again still. And it was just great to see the work that they was able to accomplish in Durban, and how they walked out on a particular day too as well, because they needed to walk out together. And I can't remember the issue that it was that they walked out on. But the importance of that unity in spirit, because all of them have great ideas coming from different backgrounds, gonna give you, when you come together with all that power, it's just greatness you're seeing. So any movement have to be collective. And it has to be a movement where you have delegations going to Africa, not these cheapy government not giving us the right amount of money, just like they will send those other parliamentarian members to deal with delegates from overseas. We need to have that opportunity there as well.
But
so
right, this is
collectively, by sending delegates, hold on sister, just a little bit more. Just by sending delegates to these areas, that's a powerful work, because you're actually having persons communicating things that they need to communicate in order to set up schools, set up air transportation, set up boat transportation, set up communities where you send the best surgeons from Africa who come here and do a particular surgery, or we can send our children to African universities as well too. So that kind of collaboration is what we're going to need right now to get this movement moving. And I think some of these movements can move without reparations money coming. We shouldn't wait on just reparations money. If the governments start to initiate proper engagement and collectivity in Africa, and we can offer trade, because it's so much shorter to go from Barbados to Africa rather than to go into England, 7 hours, back going down over Egypt, another 3 hours down to Ethiopia. Then by the time we reach South Africa, it took 11 hours. And from Barbados, it's like 4.5, 5 hours. You see what I'm saying? And the economic activity is going from one nation in the Caribbean who is of black people to the other Caribbean nation with our own Caribbean African airlines. We save a lot of money and we build our own economy at the same time and able to train humans, but not for money, but for them to go do work. Trade them to go do work is still trading. You're going over there, you're doing a particular job, you're getting an income, you can help us here, and we can trade opportunities too, and we can trade markets as well too. Okay. So,
thank you for that intervention. We are actually winding down. We just have a few minutes left. We have so many questions that I did not get to engage you on. However, time is of the essence. So what I'll have all of our panelists do as we conclude is tell us in your words, in about a minute each, what would successful reparations in St. Kitts and Nevis look like to you? And we'll start with Ras Iroy.
Definitely an independent, well-established committee to govern the affairs and handle the funds and the distribution, to manage the developmental plan, which Carla would have spoken to earlier. To see a curriculum, especially within the schools, rudely change to reflect the knowledge that we want our children to impart. And so, with UE coming on board, we don't have to teach the children things that they won't be tested on. So this has to be a follow-through. I would like to see the region band together, become the 6th region of Africa, which would make reparation a lot easier for all of us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ras Iroy. Carla, what does successful reparations in St. Kitts and Nevis look like?
A successful reparations in St. Kitts and Nevis, for me, would be a lot of what Iroy said, but as well, I would like us to get to a point where we really investigate our history. Not only us who as descendants of enslaved people, but those who may even think, if you think that you have your roots are in those who enslaved, you need to dig into that so that you can establish some sort of fund. I think we know here in St. Kitts there are persons, who there are families, there are businesses whose roots are in the enslavement of Africans. I think they should also come on board to add to that fund, because there's a healing that needs to be done also on this level.
Okay. Laverne?
For me, reparations should be holistic. It should continue to be a social movement, one that promotes morality and ethics in the process, that we get that repair that we're looking for, not in financial form, as well as an apology. An apology is key for persons to recognize that I accept responsibility for what was perpetrated against persons of color, whether it be the indigenous people, people of African descent, and indentured servants. We want to make sure that whatever funds that are distributed, that it is done in an equitable manner, and that it is used for the betterment of the society and not to have uneven distribution of funds.
Okay, thank you so much, Sankofa. We have just about a minute left. So if you can tell us briefly what successful reparations looks like for you.
Africans are in bondage because they oppose spirituality by foreign invaders and conquerors, So, and only when African righteous people come together, the world will actually come together. So we have to repair the damage spiritually as both physically. And in doing that spiritually, it has to be a reconciliation committee have to be really in place to actually help to do that work.
Okay, great. Special thanks to our guests and, of course, to you, our viewing audience, for joining us today for our discussion on reparations for St. Kitts and Nevis. As you can see, we've delved deeply into how reparations can help heal our wounds and of the past in particular. What we got from our discussion today is that collaboration is necessary. Involvement from society on a whole is what's needed to propel this movement forward, from all walks of life, from all religions, from all beliefs. So it is essential as we continue on this journey towards reparations for everyone to get involved. So we want you to remember, this conversation doesn't end here. Please join us next week as we present conversations, reflections, and the way forward. And our topic next week will be Youth Quake, Empowering Tomorrow's Leaders. Until then, we encourage you to stay engaged, stay informed, and continue the conversation. I'm Leah Crag-Chaderton, and this has been Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward on our special edition of In Focus. Thank you, and have a great day.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, we discuss healing wounds, exploring reparations for St. Kitts and Nevis.